Welcome back to Chapter 2, Part 4 about the forebrain. And the main ideas in our last section are the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the corpus callosum, frontal lobes, parietal lobes, occipital lobes, and the parietal lobes. Let's get to it. When we talk about the forebrain, this is what you and I generally mean when we say brain. Like, that guy doesn't have any brains, he thought they said trains, and he plumb missed it. Or that girl's got a lot of brains. We're talking about the forebrain. Of course, everybody has a brain or you wouldn't be alive. When the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz was pleading, "If I only had a brain," he's talking about the forebrain, because he obviously had a brain or he wouldn't be alive. The hypothalamus regulates hunger, thirst, emotion, and sexual behavior. Psychologists like me use the nickname the pleasure center of the brain to refer to the hypothalamus because all of these activities have a tremendous potential to make us feel good, and they all run through the hypothalamus. In fact, did you know that rats can be trained to press a lever bar for electrical stimulation of the hypothalamus, and they will ignore everything else, food, water, sexual opportunities, just to get that electrical stimulation. They'll do it till their paws bleed. They'll do it to the point of exhaustion and keeling over. So, the hypothalamus really deserves its nickname of the pleasure center. Next comes the hypothalamus, which is a relay station for information flowing into or out of the brain. Remember we said that the midbrain was a relay station? Well, the thalamus is just a higher level relay station. There are relay and switching stations all throughout the brain. Two other structures in the forebrain make up the limbic system, very important, and these include the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala plays an important role in emotion, especially in response to fear and anger. The amygdala helps us to form vivid memories of frightening situations so that we do our best to try to avoid those dangers in the future. Fear is a good teacher, isn't it? The amygdala, in fact, is so sensitive that when you or I observe someone with a panicked look on their face, the amygdala also becomes activated and it lights up like a Christmas tree. It comes on very quickly. The capacity to experience fear and anger has helped you and I survive. And so when we see somebody with a scared look on their face, the amygdala automatically makes sure we pay very close attention to that. It could be a matter of life or death. The hippocampus is crucial for learning and making new memories. Now, while memory is not stored in the hippocampus, it's processed there and it's distributed to other areas in the brain. And it's kind of like the post office here. The post office receives mail, it processes it, and then it delivers it throughout the community. Think of the hippocampus that way. You've heard of Alzheimer's. You may know somebody elderly with Alzheimer's. It's a neurological disorder featuring a deteriorating memory. And in the early stages, you should not be surprised to learn that it is linked to impairment in the hippocampus. When you stand up and look down on the brain, at the top of the brain, it appears to have two sides, which we call a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. And it's popular these days to talk about being, are you left brain or are you right brain? Which one? Well, it is true that the left hemisphere seems to be the primary processor of language inputs, and the right hemisphere is the primary processor for visual spatial stimuli. These differences are really oversimplified and magnified in the media. And this is because we have a corpus callosum. Corpus callosum is a thick band of nerve fibers that connects the left and the right hemispheres together. While language may be processed first in the left hemisphere, that information goes to the right hemisphere a split second later. And while visual spatial inputs may be primarily processed in the right hemisphere, that information in a similar fashion goes quickly over to the left side. So you see, the two sides of the brain are in constant communication with each other. They can't keep secrets from each other. They do a poor job of that. They are always talking with one another. So my point here is that while the media simplifies this, it's much more complicated. So please remember that. Now we get to the top of the brain, the cerebral cortex. This is what really makes us special and different from other animals. The cerebral cortex is approximately an 1/8 inch thick. There's convolutions. It folds in on itself because of the limitations provided by the skull. It's gray in color. The cerebral cortex is associated with the highest mental processes, including language, memory, thinking. It's referred to as gray matter and consists of 4 lobes and their association areas. And these include the frontal lobes, the parietal lobes, occipital lobes, and the temporal lobes. Some, and I emphasize some, of the major activities associated with the frontal lobe include planning, the ability to envision taking some future action and then imagining what the consequences might be, and then to make your best judgment going forwards. Since the ability to imagine alternate realities and the impulse control to inhibit those realities that we don't choose resides in the frontal lobes, it should come as no surprise to you that this is where personality resides, in the frontal lobes. There are plenty of cases of people with brain damage to the frontal lobes. They have no other impairment, but they experience personality changes as a result. Not unusual in motor vehicle accidents with automobiles or motorcycles. People go to the emergency room and get cleared, medically cleared to go, and then family report, this happens from time to time, weeks or months later, that their loved one is not himself. He's changed somehow. She's different. A personality change can result because they had trauma to the frontal lobes. Parietal lobes are important in processing touch stimuli. Your parietal lobes help you identify objects in your pockets. So, for example, you can pull out the key to your front door late at night without even looking. There are plenty of cases of people with damage to the parietal lobes, and they can no longer recognize objects by touch alone. We can blindfold them and put familiar objects in a hand, and they can't recognize it by touch alone. Now, if their vision is okay, they recognize it. They may recognize the sound of it, but just by touch alone can no longer recognize it. Think how horrible that would be. We all depend on a sense of touch a great deal. But if you really rely on it heavily for your work, that would be a major problem. Then we have the occipital lobes. And these lobes are important in helping us to process visual stimuli. They help you quickly recognize a familiar face in a crowd. Or if you're walking down the hall at school and you're trying to find your buddy, you stick your head in the classroom, you can instantly tell if he or she is there or if they're not. There are cases of people with damage to the occipital lobes. Their vision is not bad, but they can no longer recognize family and friends. Think how awful that would be in a marriage, on your job. It would present major difficulties. And people getting a divorce or losing their job, that's not too hard to understand, is it? And lastly, the temporal lobes. The temporal lobes are important to help us process auditory stimuli. It helps you recognize the voice of someone that you may not have heard in a while. Helps you recognize a new song from your favorite singer or band that you've never heard before, but you know that is this singer's sound, or that sounds like my band. And there are cases of people with damage to the temporal lobes who can no longer recognize familiar sounds or the voice of loved ones, family. Think how awful that would be. Well, that does it for now. We've covered a lot in Chapter 2, Biology and Behavior, and finished it up with the brain and with the forebrain. I'll see you next time in Chapter 3. Later.